You've been told your entire life that freedom means having choices. And you do have choices, thousands of them. What to study, where to work, what to buy, who to follow. You choose every day. But here's the thing no one mentions. You were allowed to choose. You were never allowed to decide. There's a difference. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start with something everyone agrees on. Freedom is the ability to choose. If you can pick between A and B, you're free. That's the foundation of how we understand our lives. You chose your career path. You chose where you live. You chose how you spend your time. And if things didn't work out the way you wanted, well, you made the wrong choice. If things did work out, you made the right one. This is how society frames success and failure. Personal responsibility, individual agency, free will. It's everywhere. In school, you were told you could be anything you wanted. The system rewarded hard work and talent. In the market, you were told you could buy what reflects your values, vote with your dollar. In politics, you were told your voice matters. One person, one vote. And it's not a lie. You do have choices, more than any generation before you. Hundreds of colleges, thousands of products, endless content, infinite information. The menu is vast. So vast, in fact, that the problem seems to be too much choice. Analysis paralysis, decision fatigue, overwhelm. But what if the problem isn't the number of choices? What if the problem is that you're choosing from a menu you didn't write? Here's where it gets strange. If choice were truly open, if freedom were simply the ability to select, then outcomes would be random, chaotic, unpredictable. But they're not. Look around. Most people end up in a narrow band of careers. Despite infinite possibilities, the same jobs absorb the majority. Most people structure their lives the same way. Work, consume, save, repeat. Most people believe roughly the same things at the same time. Ideas spread in waves. Consensus forms without discussion. Even rebellion is patterned. The counterculture of one decade becomes the branding of the next. You might feel like breaking free, but notice how even that rebellion becomes part of the menu. Now, you could say this is because people naturally gravitate toward what works. That's part of it. But if that were the whole story, you'd expect more variance. You'd expect the menu to change more often. You'd expect new options to emerge from the bottom up. But they don't. Options emerge from the top down. And they arrive pre-filtered. The choices you're given aren't neutral. They've been shaped. Not by conspiracy, not by a single hand. By structure. By incentives. By the quiet decisions made long before you arrived. So how does it work? How do you control choice without eliminating it? You don't tell people what to do. You design the environment where decisions are made. There are 4 mechanisms. Let's go through them. Before you ever see a choice, someone decided what would be on the menu. You don't choose between infinite careers, you choose between the ones that post job openings. You don't choose between infinite ideas, you choose the ones amplified. Even this video, the topic you clicked on, was curated to appear in your feed. You don't choose between infinite candidates. You choose between the ones who secured funding. The first filter happens before you arrive. And that filter is invisible. How a choice is presented determines how it's understood. 2 candidates debate. The questions are written by someone else. The topics are chosen in advance. The frame guides your attention. You're asking, which candidate do I prefer? Not, should this system exist at all? You're told the debate is about the issues, but the issues are already framed. The frame limits the question, and the question limits the answer. Boundaries are everywhere. Income, location, social pressure. You can choose your career, but you need an income. You can choose where to live, but you need to afford it. You can choose your values, but you need to function within the system. You can pick, as long as you stay inside the box. The constraints aren't oppressive. They're just there. And they guide you gently, consistently, towards certain outcomes. The subtle truth. You feel free because the box feels natural. Once you've made a choice, the system rewards alignment. Choices aligned with the system are rewarded. Promotion, attention, validation. You get hired for fitting the role. You get promoted for following the path. You get attention for repeating acceptable ideas. Choices outside the system often fade quietly. Not because anyone is forcing you, but because the incentives point in one direction. And you, like everyone, respond to incentives. The result? You feel free. Because you are. You chose. But the architecture of your choice was designed long before you arrived. So who writes the menu? Not a person, not a cabal. A layer. Power doesn't operate through commands anymore. It operates through infrastructure, through platforms, through credentialing systems, through funding pipelines, through algorithmic curation. Whoever controls the infrastructure controls the options. And most infrastructure is owned by people with aligned incentives. Not because they're evil, because they're optimizing. For profit, for stability, for growth, for scale. And optimization produces convergence. The same schools feed the same firms. The same firms hire from the same networks. The same networks fund the same ideas. It's not a conspiracy. It's emergence. And the result is a menu that feels infinite but is actually quite narrow. Now, you might think, but I chose something different. I went off the path. And you might have. But ask yourself, was the option you chose legible to the system? Could it be monetized, credentialed, scaled? Or did you have to invent your own language to describe it? Most alternative paths are just options that were added to the menu later. Even your alternative paths often had to be translated into legible forms. You adapted and the system rewarded you. Notice how subtle compliance feels voluntary. The real question is, who decides what gets added? And what gets left out? Let's bring this home. Think about your own life. Your career, your education, your beliefs, your daily routine. How much of it did you choose? How much of it was already decided by the time you arrived? The college you chose from a list of accredited institutions. The major you picked from a list of available programs. The job you accepted from openings posted publicly. Where you live from a list of affordable places. The ideas you believe from socially acceptable positions. And at every stage, you felt like you were deciding. Because you were. But the menu was written before you got there. And the strange part? This doesn't mean you were manipulated. It means the system is designed so well that participation feels voluntary. That moment when you realize you followed the path, not chose it, that's the snap. That's the recognition. You internalize the constraints as your own preferences. You adapted. And adaptation is rewarded. So you keep adapting until you can't tell the difference between what you want and what the system wants from you. This isn't a failure on your part. It's a feature of the system. It's designed to feel this way. And the system is so good at this, you can't tell the difference between what you want and what the system wants. So now you see it. The difference between choosing and deciding. You are allowed to choose. You are never allowed to decide what the choices would be. And here's the question that doesn't go away. Who is holding the menu? Not a person. Not a villain. A structure. An incentive system. Embedded decisions made upstream. And once you see it in one place, you'll start seeing it everywhere. The jobs, the funding, the ideas, the stories. In what you're allowed to say. In what jobs exist. In what ideas get funded. In what stories get told. You'll notice the frame around the conversation. The frame becomes visible. You'll notice the options that were never offered. The options never offered stand out. And you'll realize the most important decisions aren't made at the ballot box. They're made long before you arrive. This doesn't mean you're powerless. But your question has changed. The question is no longer, what should I choose? The question is, who decided what I'm allowed to choose from? And that question doesn't have an answer yet. And it won't go away.